Welcome back to the Breakout Barn, where it is currently 18 degrees and so cold that my heat won't turn on. So today we're running the wood stove. Quick hitter today, something that I noticed when I went to get my handy dandy snowblower up and running, because we are about to get 14 to 26 inches of snow, I think they're saying, is that there's not a lot of information on snowblower maintenance. And as I delved into this, I figured that it was worthwhile for me to document my struggles so that other people might be able to make theirs a little bit easier. So what I have is a Troy-Bilt 2620 model snowblower. It has a quote-unquote Troy-Bilt 208cc engine, electric start, all the bells and whistles, adjustable chute, 7 different speeds, blah, 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 the whole 9, right? Like a top tier dumbass, I did not fully run all the gas out of it last winter. I think we were expecting another storm a couple days later, and I just figured I'll leave the gas in it because that storm was supposed to come and it never came, and then I forgot about it. That being said, this guy is about 10 years old, and I cleaned the carb on it probably 3 times, pulled it out of storage, and the gas just smelled like straight paint thinner, whatever was left in the tank. So I figured it was time for a new carb. I already did that. When I put it back together and tried to get it up and running, I found that I have no spark at all. So not really surprised. Again, 10 years of New England winters up here. This thing has seen some abuse. It's taken some abuse. I only ever bust it out when I have heavy snow. I typically use the tractor to plow. And the snow that they're calling for tonight is going to be thick and heavy, and I'm going to need the snowblower. So with that being said, started doing a little bit of research, and there is like zero information on how to actually replace the igniter module on these things. So snowblowers are pretty simple, right? There's no battery or anything like that. Typically you use this inductive pickup to generate a magnetic field that converts it into electricity that causes a spark. On this harness, this whole thing was like, 18 bucks, right? On this harness, we have a spark plug wire and boot. We have whatever this guy is. Don't know yet. Couldn't figure it out. And then we have these 2 guys here that go to the quote-unquote key. And all this is basically a non-contact switch. If the switch is closed, it will not start. When you put the key in, it separates 2 contacts, and then it can start. Basically allows power to flow. So I already diagnosed it. I know it has no spark. I tried a couple different spark plugs just to see if I'd gotten a bum one, and I've got nothing coming out of it. Luckily for me, I have an electric starter on this snowblower, so I'm not hand cranking this thing. Where we are from an actual teardown perspective, I've already removed the heat shield, which is a total pain in the ass on this particular model because there is a bolt buried back in here. And right in there. That you have to actually loosen up the stanchion that holds the chute directional control, push it forward out of the way to get that bolt out. That bolt is not going back in. Heat shield comes off. Carb is right here under the airbox, little airbox intake assembly guy. I don't believe to replace the igniter module I need to take this off again. Hopefully I don't. It's kind of a pain in the ass. But I do need to take off the lower section of the case. I've already removed the pull start mechanism, which was just 3 10mm bolts here. Pretty simple. I do have to get this case off because I believe the igniter assembly is located like right here. Yeah, I do have to pull this off. Anyways, just a real quick one. Just wanted to put this out there for anyone that has a no spark issue with the Troy-Bilt 2620. There's a lot of videos on other models. The igniter module is kind of the same, but how you access it is different. So I figured that I would actually, try and help a homie out. I'm gonna go ahead and get this done via time lapse, and then I'll walk you through any of the pertinent steps when it's all said and completed. Thanks. Status report. We have exposed the perpetrator and the heat has come on. Of course, I gotta take apart the entire thing again to get to it, because serviceability is just not something that engineers keep in mind. There she blows, right in here. All right, so this whole flywheel is actually magnetic, and that's what actually induces the pulse into here that converts into electricity. As you can see, she's a bit crusty. Again, it's just 10 years worth of wear. You know, that part for me to buy costs $27, I think, for that entire assembly, right? So they're probably making it out of $11 worth of components. It was not intended to last as long as it has. It's a serviceable component. Who knows what went wrong with it, but we'll get it swapped out. As you can see, the harness kind of takes a nosedive up in through here. This is the carb assembly itself. I did have to take that off. This is a choke assembly here. So to actually expose this entire assembly, I had to remove this main cover, right? And to do that, I had to remove the 2 bolts from the gas tank on this side, and then there's one buried in here that goes into the head of the motor. In order to get to this one, I had to take off the belt cover, loosen 2 bolts here. The whole snow chute assembly kind of tips forward on those bolts, and then I could get a ratchet in there and get that bolt out. To remove the plastic cover that covers all the switches, this guy upside down, I had to pull the 2 bolts out of the starter, or the 2 screws, I should say, out of the starter, which are right here. And then that plastic piece kind of unhinges. You have to take off the choke knob and the throttle lever, which are both press fit onto the rod. Throttle lever's a little bit tough. I had to use a pry bar and a hammer to knock it off. The choke lever, on the other hand, pries off, and I bent the shit out of my choke lever trying to get it off because it is just 10-year-old plastic on there. The only bolts that physically hold this in are the actual 2 carb studs here, and this whole air cleaner assembly just sits right on top of that, kind of bends up and over here. So no harm, no foul on that. We got to figure out a way to get this wiring harness out from behind here. You can see it buried in there under, we got a little breather tube off the valve cover there. That's the harness that goes up to the key switch, and we got to figure out where that one random white wire goes. Aside from that, once you get to that point, it's 4 10mm bolts in the case itself. 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th one is in here. And then there is also a I think it's like I think it's a 5/16 or an 8mm. I gotta look at the socket. I believe it's a 5/16 that sits in here on the top of this guard. That screws right into that guy right on the face there. So the actual igniter assembly is just 2 10mm bolts. I'm gonna go ahead and take those off and get the harness out of there and get the new one in. So here in Connecticut, we have a lovely species of rodent known as the field mouse, and the field mice decided to turn my snowblower into their summer vacation condo. They ate the entire freaking ground wire. The whole thing is gone, which explains why I had no spark. And of course, because whoever at Troy-Bilt decided it was a good idea, when they engineered this thing, this ground wire actually runs from the igniter module down here, up underneath, behind the car, blah, 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 around, and then it bolts to the underside of the throttle bracket right here, that specific screw. Could not tell you why. That sounds like probably the dumbest thing that I've ever heard. I'm guessing that it has something to do, actually looking at it, I can tell you right now that it has something to do with the throttle kill. So basically when you turn this thing to stop, it makes contact with the ground wire, and that kills your spark, which shuts the motor down. That being said, this sucks. Looks like I am going to have to put a new loop on there, which is fine. I have spools and spools of wire. Either way, I'm going to replace the igniter module because, again, it's 10 years old. I don't want to put it back together with 10-year-old parts, regardless of how mechanically simple they are. Stuff just fails over time, right? So we'll replace the ground wire, put the new igniter module on, and then get this thing up and running. Probably 2 hours before the snow flies, because we are well into the evening here, and it is getting close. And they're now saying 14 to 26 inches and 40-mile-an-hour winds, which is the kicker on that. So hopefully we survive. I've seen a perfect storm. The perfect storm? No, I'm thinking the day after tomorrow. The one where nobody listens to scientists and then the world goes haywire. Kind of like, you know, life now. Anyways, back to repairs. I'm gonna go ahead and replace this wire, install the module, button it back together, and then catch up with you guys then. Okay, so where we are, we're at a point where we can, it's reassembled to the point where we can fire it up and see if it's gonna run. This is a critical step in the juncture, because if I spend all my time putting everything back together and I have to rip it apart again, that's just gonna suck, right? So you get it to a point where it's gonna run. A couple of things need to be put back on. It's definitely not safe to operate right now. The flywheel's exposed, everything like that. There is some adjustments that we might potentially need to make to the igniter module itself. There's a depth adjustment on the screws, and I'll show you on the old module. There's witness marks there. You can see the circles around the ovular bolt holes as to where the igniter module was installed. So what we're going to do, pretty straightforward here. We're just going to we're going to plug in the starter and you know, make sure it's choked up and in the right positions, and just see if it'll fire, right? So determine whether or not we restored spark, and if so, then we can continue with reassembly. Playing with the throttle. So there we go. Reassemble in reverse order and have fun moving snow.